Tips from Trestle is brought to you by the Belter Companies, Navigator Group Purchasing, and eMenu Choice Point of Sale. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. During 3 decades in the hospitality industry, I focused my work on creating exceptional experiences for the customers we serve. My goal for this podcast? Educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By creating hospitality with a purpose, by bringing the customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Heidi No. Heidi is a Belter's Superstore leader at their Glendale, Wisconsin location and has been with the company for over 6 years. In addition to her time as a Superstore leader, she also worked at the Belter corporate office, providing executive level support to their operations. Heidi, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk and dive into tabletops and how we can really bring a better approach to that for our senior living operators. But first, I want to learn a little bit more about you and your background, kind of how you got into the food service world, working with Belter, and just kind of give us a little bit of backstory for our listeners.
Okay, so as you said, I started with Belter about 6 years ago. I had previously worked for a nationwide retailer for about 15 years in their operations department. And I wanted a change. And I kind of felt like Belter would be a good place. It's a family company and kind of offers a lot of the stuff that I was looking for in a career, but was a little bit different. So working in the corporate office, I was able to learn all about Belter and all the things that we can do here as a company. But I definitely missed customer interaction and dealing with people and getting to know people. So that's why moving over to the store or the showroom that we have in Glendale was a natural fit for me.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by your background in retail, right? Because when you work in a retail environment, it's all about how things present, how you can draw people in. And I think that background lends itself so well to talking about tabletop. And so I'd be curious for you to kind of share a little bit on how you're using that background in retail to transition into supporting your customers and others with designing tabletop in general.
Right. Well, so a lot of it is visual. So in a store, you are trying to pull people in by the way that things look, your merchandising and displays. But that's really similar to tabletop in general because customers or people, you first see it, it's visual, you eat with your eyes first. So depending on how you have your restaurant set up or the table set up, it's someone's first experience with it. So it's a great opportunity for you to kind of showcase your unique look or what you're trying to do for your establishment.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with the idea of how we can bring some of those retail concepts into senior living, not just from, the multiple outlets and that more, hotel resort style offerings, but how do we bring some of the marketing approaches or the like you said, the visual and the merchandising to really draw and keep those residents engaged. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of the philosophy behind tabletop. Do you find that customers that you work with have a philosophy around how they select their tabletop smallwares?
I think so. I really feel like most operators, whether it be someone in senior living or someone who has a small independent restaurant, has an idea of what they're looking for when they come in. So whether they're starting out brand new or they're doing a refresh or remodel, they have an idea of what they eventually would like to be. But so it's kind of just talking with the customer and seeing what's going to make the most sense for that idea in their head, of how we can make that a reality for them. And there are times where people are looking to us to give them advice, but I do feel like most often people have something in mind that they're looking to achieve with their tabletop.
Yeah, when you're thinking about that kind of big picture, right? Because typically that goes when we're talking about tabletop, it's not kind of its own little standalone, right? They're also looking at things like the walls and the size of the space and the lighting and kind of the decor of the space. And so when you're working with customers, do you find that there's a lot of overlap of you working with not just maybe the customer rep, but also maybe their design teams and their construction teams when it comes to new models and renovations to really kind of make sure that the tabletop helps tie everything together with their kind of vision that they're looking for?
Typically, yes. Personally, the people that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis in the store generally aren't the larger customers where they have the multi-unit chains. So who we see in the store are the small independent restaurants. But I know that on the larger nationwide or chains, like the larger facilities, they definitely do have more people involved than just the owner operator. But it is definitely something that you need to think about, that there's all those other things that go into it as opposed to, just the plate that you're putting on the table.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to consider that bigger picture, like you're saying, because this is something that, it's not just like a napkin color that, oh, well, we don't like that shade, we can change it to something else. This is a big investment up front for redoing or even starting up your dining operations. And so, and in thinking about that, I'm curious as to, how you guys approach working with customers to streamline their china, their flatware, their glassware around multiple dining concepts. This is something that operators are doing more of as they kind of shift towards older boomers and that market of seniors. And so, we're looking at things like, different dining areas, restaurants, casual cafes, bars, patios, and poolside service. So kind of all the things would normally see kind of out in the retail, restaurant, and hospitality space. And so when you're working with a customer on that, what kind of guidance do you give them about streamlining their tabletop or those dining concepts?
Well, I think that we need to consider a couple aspects. So the overall aesthetic, or kind of what they're trying to achieve with their entire experience, is really important. And then looking at kind of how you mentioned, what are they doing with it? Is it a dining room and an outside dining space, or do they have a bar? Do they have that grab and go? So you kind of look at everything that they're looking to work with. And then you also want to take a consideration the space that they have to store all of the items that they're looking to purchase, and their staffing level that they have. So are they going to have a full staff for each of these areas, or is it going to be something that you're going to have one wait staff kind of bouncing between your actual dining room and your outdoor patio, and making sure that those processes are easy for everyone to follow. And then most importantly for everyone is their budget. So how can we make this work kind of in all of those constraints for you? So we try to take a look at how we can achieve the overall aesthetic or ambiance that they're trying to have. And then there may be things that we can use in multiple ways. So if we start taking a look at certain items, we can use it in multiple areas. So bar, patio, and the dining room, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, like melamine right now is kind of a hot product. Lots of different vendors have it, and they've got lots of different style options available. And we've really come a long way with melamine. So you can have something that looks like an actual china plate, and you wouldn't know that it's not until you actually touch it. So melamine dinnerware is something that's I guess, a nice tool to have as far as tabletop is concerned because it's pretty versatile. So you can use it outdoors, you can use it at a bar, but you can also use it in your restaurant for a little bit more of a casual option for tabletop.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point because when I work with, programming spaces and work with operators in my business, I always have to think about that, right? Like, I have one project where there's the bar is right inside of the pool area, right? And so the struggle there is well, how do we provide service out of the bar to the pool? And you mentioned melamine. I mean, that's such a great way to approach it. Of these are plates in China and serviceware that can be used in multiple outlets, and it really helps, especially like in the back of the house too, as you're planning for, plating and kind of training your staff that, hey, all of these items, maybe 70% of your menu can actually be served on the same plate, regardless of where it goes in the operation. And so I think that's such a great thing to point out. One other thing I was curious about when it comes to barware, um, I know that if you go to, some finer retail type locations, they're going to have kind of the gamut of glassware that you could possibly need for cocktails and wine and that. Um, do you see with senior living operators from your vantage point that streamlining that down to maybe the basics is a much more effective way for them to be successful? Today, I want to tell you about one of Tressel's senior living partners, Belter. Belter is a food service design, equipment, and supply company that has been providing expert guidance to the food and beverage industry for nearly a century. A strategic partner to the most successful food service operations in the country, Belter provides support in kitchen and bar design, equipment procurement and install, and supplies. Their team of senior living food service experts have experience across the continuum of care. From independent living to skilled nursing and CCRCs, Belter specializes in right-sizing new facilities, modernizing remodels, and providing the right food service equipment and supplies. At Belter, they are committed to creating memorable experiences for their customers and their guests. With their top-notch team and a global network of quality supplier partners, their customer-focused approach is built on a foundation of collaboration and decades of industry experience. So thank you for considering Belter for all of your food service needs.
Yeah, I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, because a space I think is always an issue, right? Where you're going to store everything. And then actual durability of the product. So, I mean, the nicer stemware looks beautiful, but may not last forever, right? I mean, it's hard to
Right.
keep those from breaking. And if you have someone that has dexterity issues, that may not be the best idea. So just having a basic either, I mean, stemless wine glasses are actually really great. They're super versatile. You can use it for red or white wine, and you can also put cocktails in there as well. So I think that those are a great option. Plus, you don't have to worry about having a small area for someone to hold on to. It's a little bit easier. But as far as glassware is concerned, kind of on the same topic of melamine, polycarbonate drinkware is a great option because it's durable and it looks fantastic. There's so many options that are available that, again, you can use that outdoors. And if it needs to be brought indoors, it doesn't look like it's a plastic cup that you're using. It's really come a long way.
Yeah. Do you find that with, especially with the glassware and the polycarbonate, do you find that they're making like the glassware in that material the same as you might find in standard glassware? And so it's, like you said, kind of hard to distinguish between the two if you're sitting at the same table or at the same bar.
Yeah, you'd be surprised that the options that are available, there's different patterns to the glasses. So cocktail glasses, you've got um it's really fantastic actually. And the price again is a little bit more, you're investing more on the front end, but the durability and longevity of the product, you'll get a return on that. And you don't have to worry about actual glass breakage and cleaning that up. And so, but we have lots of samples here. So, I mean, we're fortunate enough to be able to see it in person, but I've got displays in the showroom and customers have to pick it up to actually notice that it's polycarbonate and not glass.
Yeah, that's a, like you said, it's so great how far they've come. Because I know when I first got in the industry and I started, because with a hospitality and hotel background, I would see the melamine and the polycarbonate glassware years ago, and I'm like, we can't use this. There's the dignity aspect of it was just not there. But now, like you're saying, the product is available and there's enough variety and choices that I've actually had a couple of clients where I've recommended, hey, maybe this melamine plate is better for, say, your memory care neighborhood than just a standard china. So I think that it's come a long way, and you make some great points about how you can streamline some product and use it in that multiple outlet ways. So um, kind of along those lines, and when I mentioned memory care, what do you find, or what are some considerations that you would recommend to our listeners when they think about the different care levels, right? When you think about that, when we say senior living, that is really truly this uniquely all encompassing term. And really, it means anything from active adult 55 plus apartments all the way to full blown skilled nursing facilities. And so obviously one resident at the end of that spectrum versus the other end is a very, very different one. So when you think about that, what are some things that you would recommend to someone who's looking at putting together a tabletop package that makes sense for their operation, regardless of the care level?
A Navigator is the largest full-service GPO that exclusively focuses on the senior living community. And what that means is we provide products and services that help our members provide a great environment for their residents, such as like MRO, hospitality equipment, food, business products, as well as technology solutions. We actually surround our members with a level of support unmatched in the industry.
So the things that I would consider when you're looking at the different options are that we do have products that are available for the more skilled or acute care. So you may have products that you need to bring room service. So something on a tray, or like the melamine that we talked about, that
Mhm.
durable tabletop. But in the regular senior living, I think that you have options that are would be similar to something that you would use in a regular restaurant setting. So just from my own personal experience, I am fortunate enough to still have my grandmom still in my life, and she has recently moved into skilled living. And so I've just noticed a big difference between the senior living facility that she was at previously to where she is now. So as she's gotten older, she's definitely lost most of her eyesight. And so it makes it
Mm.
a little bit more difficult. So just kind of thinking of things for those residents that have a harder time either seeing or being able to actually do things independently, but it's still really important for her to be able to do things by herself. So there are products that we have that are intended for people that may have some dexterity or seeing problems, or like you had mentioned before, the memory care. But then with senior living, I think that tabletop is just more of kind of the experience that you're trying to get while you're there. So it should be more enjoyable, like a restaurant, and depending on what the application is, whether it's the more formal dining room or a more casual cafe or a grab and go, there's lots of different options that you can make it be what those different things that you're looking to achieve are.
Yeah. No, you bring up some great points. I think when you're talking about the visual acuity of residents, that's something that I know we have to work with and work through on a daily basis in our communities, and kind of creating that, like, the stacked, if you will, variation of colors. So maybe a white tablecloth on a dark plate with light colored foods on it, or however you want to build that out. Being able to create that contrast, like you mentioned, is so important, especially when you get into like a skilled setting or a memory care setting, to kind of help support that. Super important. And the one thing that you mentioned, which I've also thought was interesting, is that just because it's skilled nursing doesn't mean that we don't want to make it inviting for families to come and join in too, right? And so creating that experience around a restaurant style or a restaurant service in a skilled nursing facility or a memory care neighborhood, I think can draw people in and create the overall experience that you're talking about. So I think those are all great points that you mentioned. Um, One thing I'm curious about, you briefly mentioned like room service and room trays, and I think that's something that oftentimes gets overlooked with operators because it's an afterthought, right? It's, oh, we got to go take Mrs. Jones her meal. She can't come to the dining room, so it gets the food, which is a lot of efforts put into, then gets stuffed into a styrofoam box and taken down to the room, and that's just not an experience that someone wants. And so what kinds of things would you recommend operators look at when they think about a room service experience versus that kind of styrofoam box meal that they would be getting?
Well, if I guess there's a couple different options that are available, and things that we would provide here at Belter. I mean, depending on whether you need it to be a disposable to go container that you're actually putting the food in, if that's what works at your facility, there's definitely nicer or higher elevated options. The actual container itself can make the food better.
Yeah.
Styrofoam doesn't look great. It doesn't hold the heat very well. There are a wide variety of things that we can do as far as disposable products. So whether it be a plastic container with the tight fitting vented lid that'll hold the heat and keep the food tasting its best.
Mhm.
We've also got more environmentally friendly options, fiber containers or the actual boxes that you can put the food in. But if you are able to actually put it on plates and do the plate covers on there, you've got options in stainless steel or again, that melamine or plastic, the polycarbonate covers, where you
Mhm.
can actually have that kind of create that ambiance. So you don't necessarily feel so bad eating in your room by yourself. You can kind of have that fine dining experience without it being so lonely, I guess, too, by yourself and eating something that's kind of soggy in a styrofoam container. So,
Yeah.
and we also have like heated tray cabinets that you can take to keep the food warm. I mean, there's lots of different things that we have that can take it from, that afterthought to actually elevating that in-room dining experience.
Yeah. And one of the things, I mean, I love this the way you kind of put together this room service tray idea, and creating an experience around it. I think one of the things operators sometimes forget is that there's an opportunity with each one of those meals to provide a revenue source for their communities, right? If it's a meal in a styrofoam box, it's hard to ask for an additional 3, 5, $6 for that meal. But if it's put on a really nice tray with all of the same type of service you're getting in the dining room, then now all of a sudden there's that value that makes it worth doing, and people will pay for that. I think families would be very invested in being able to have that service for their loved ones.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So kind of as we wrap up here today, Heidi, all of this is really valuable information, but it really comes down to you got to be able to support the customer in the right way to be able to make all of these decisions that are going to have long-standing impact on resident experience and the kitchen operations and everything. So, how does your approach to supporting the customer through their tabletop selections work, and why is that so important to you in Belter?
So we approach every customer differently. It's important for us to listen to our customers and take direction from them. Belter is a family-owned company that's been around for almost 100 years, and Belter prides itself on the customer interaction and creating that relationship with the customer. Um, Personally, I'm spoiled working in our showroom because I have all of the products from all of the vendors that we work with available to me. So when I have a customer that comes in, we can take a look at all of the options that I have from multiple vendors. So it's not the same as looking on your computer screen and going through a virtual catalog. We can actually put different options down on a table and see what makes sense. But in addition to that, we have the support of all of our vendors. So we can take a look at the samples, have stuff sent to customers, and really see what's going to work for them. Because like I mentioned before, people have an idea in their mind, but it doesn't always work the way that they want. So we have that opportunity to be able to listen to them and make recommendations to the customers based on what they're asking for. But knowing that we have the experience. So sometimes because someone has an idea in their head doesn't necessarily mean that it will work for the application that they're trying to make it work for. So it's important that we make sure that the customer gets what they want, but also that's what's best for their business.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important, that individual ability to work with each customer, because even though senior living and independent living, you can say each one of those verticals is similar, everybody has a different approach, a market is different. And so it's such a great way to support those you work with. So Heidi, this has been a great conversation. I love the fact we were able to deep dive onto a topic like this tabletop and how it can be really important to be strategic in thinking about it. So I appreciate your time today and for joining me here on Tips from Trestle.
Well, thanks for having me, Aaron. I really appreciated all of our conversations we had today.
So there you have it, another one in the books. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Twitter at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.